It's whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, and we're live.
Hey, we're live. Hey, Morgana.
Good thing you said that right before then.
So, if you can hear us, it sounds as though Morgana's having some technical difficulties. So, Stephen and I will take over until she's able to get on here. So,
Yeah.
welcome, Weirdlings. Welcome to another Friday night edition of Weird Awakenings. And I'll go ahead and give the intro to Stephen. What are we talking about tonight, sir?
Thanks, Cecil. Standing stones.
Standing stones.
And arguably the most famous is Stonehenge in England. But there are also standing stones in America. North Carolina actually has its own version of Stonehenge. And there are dolmens and things like that all over the world. A lot of it's in Russia. You have some in Europe. Well, I guess technically Russia is part of Europe, but Ireland and England, and then you have quite a few of them in America. So,
when I was doing some research, there was so many in America I didn't realize.
Yes, Montana has quite a few. Friend of mine lives out there, Duke. He's filmed some, and it's really interesting on some of the videos that he's taken. You can actually see the knobs. I don't know. It's kind of like your fist. You can see those protruding out on those stones up there. It would be great if somebody, who knew more about that would go investigate.
And that's probably something I have a feeling that there's way, way more, because I mean, typically the standing stones that you see are hundreds, if not thousands of years old.
Mm-hmm.
And even in our area, like it's very likely, like, because at one time the Appalachian Mountains and the Scotland Highlands were all one thing,
Right.
So it's very possible that, there was some civilizations here thousands upon thousands of years ago. And if you believe in Tartaria, they for sure were.
Right.
So it's untelling what's out in the woods that's just covered up with mountain or just deteriorated and stuff that's just never been seen.
Mm-hmm. See, that's the thing. It's always kind of frustrated me is we really don't have much here in the deep South.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to see stuff like that, you would have to get farther north than the 33rd parallel.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, that's fascinating to me, and I'm sure some of it can be explained, by the rocks being carried by the glaciers and things like that. But at the same time, it's not going to explain all those dolmens. I know we're talking about standing stones, but the dolmens to me are those standing stones, and they have a flat rock, placed on top of it.
Yeah, so. Yeah, that's so wild. I want and it's a mystery. It's like Stonehenge, for example. It's a mystery to how they even put it together originally. It's been reconstructed, of course, in the 60s.
Yes,
but how did they originally do it? It's almost like a mystery comparable to the pyramids in a way. Mm-hmm. I think we have more idea about how they would have done that than we did the pyramids, but still kind of mysterious.
Yeah. And to me, the distance that they carried some of these large stones, I think some of it was like 150 miles away is where the stones were actually located, and they moved them to place, to the Salisbury Plain. So I think I remember correctly.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And if you were curious about the name, it is true that is where the Salisbury steak came from. So you have them to thank for that too.
Really?
No, I don't know.
Hey, I liked it. that fed right in real good. I guess too convenient. Huh?
I see. Hello, Mike. Hello, Landa. I don't know how to show your comments on screen, and Morgana's having some technical issues. But welcome everybody for tuning in again tonight. We're glad to have you. I can see your comments though. I just don't know how to show them. There we go. But it's amazing to me that they could carry these huge, massive stones 150 miles. I have trouble carrying groceries into the house.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, I always like the challenge though. Whenever we have quite a few bags, see, can I get it all in one trip?
I've only failed maybe twice this year at getting it all in one trip.
Yeah.
I don't care if I have to drag it.
Yeah, I guess while we're talking on this subject, the America Stonehenge is in New Hampshire,
Mhm.
and the site was first dubbed Mystery Hill. And with this, it's really really interesting because I forget the young man. I think his last name is Stone, but he did a line from the Stonehenge there in New Hampshire, and it goes through Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain, and it ends up going through Lebanon, Baalbek, Lebanon. So to me that's we to me that right there kind of throws out the idea that early man was just a knuckle dragging caveman who didn't know anything, because how it's just like the with that, how could they line that up?
Yeah, it's kind of strange how they could do that, honestly. Mike's got a comment in here that said, "Did you know Tartarians invented tartar sauce?" I want to touch on that for a second. that's a that's a common misconception, sir. That's created as a basically a curtain whenever you searched them, and they're just trying to discredit what they actually were.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to who's behind the curtain as well, Landa.
Yeah. So am I. I wish they would speak.
Hello.
There you are.
Hey.
Can you hear us?
Yay. Oh, well, I had to get on my phone. I'm not sure what's going on with my computer. When I can hear you all, you can't hear me. And
Yeah.
when you can hear
Oh,
me, I can't hear you.
Uh,
So
okay.
I'm I'm going to do a reboot later and maybe that'll fix the issue. But in the meantime, here I am. Hope
awesome.
everybody's
Yes.
doing good tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I feel like I've missed so much good stuff. Y'all probably covered everything.
No. No. No.
I'm glad
No.
you popped in because I think we was getting ready to start going down a dark path.
Yeah. We
Uh,
we, we were going to end up going down a Tartarian path.
well, I mean, who's to say that they weren't responsible for more than one set of
Exactly.
standing
Exactly.
stones?
You,
You know,
you, with as many standing stones as there are in Russia, that would fit in really really well.
hmm
Well,
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mom.
no, yeah, it's fine. It's always kind of surprised me that, sometimes when you're talking to someone and you say something about standing stones, they immediately think Stonehenge. That's always the first because it is the most famous.
Yes.
But a lot of people don't realize there are standing stones and monoliths all over the world.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I
Just
mean,
like
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, and then Hadley and I had a friend that was actually from England, and he lived about 10, I think 10 miles from Avebury.
mm,
And one of the things we talked about over time was what these monoliths and circles and everything could have been made for, because it's easy to say, oh, they were to mark the solstices and stuff like that.
Right.
But he said, just from visiting these places and growing up with them, the fact that they could be gates to other dimensions, other worlds, and stuff like that. And he said, Stonehenge, he said, is like a dead gate. He said, when you go there, there's no magical energy or anything that you would expect from just all of the rumor and hype. He said, but if you go to Avebury, you can feel the vibration in the
mm,
stones
Right.
and everything. So I always thought that was really cool, to be able to talk to somebody who grew up around it, because it's always, is
Right.
it a big tourist trap or is there something there?
Hmm.
And I always thought that was really interesting. I regret that I didn't take him up on his offer to come visit before we lost him, because I'm like, I'd like to have seen it from, someone's, you know, being able to tour somewhere from someone that lives there, because you'd get to see so many things that you wouldn't see, with a tourist guide or something like that.
And it's kind of crazy to me because I'm glad you brought up Avebury.
Hmm.
It's crazy to me that it's so close to Stonehenge, but it's not one of the most popular, and it's so much bigger.
Yes,
Mhm.
It's got
absolutely.
over 100 megaliths at least, and
Yep.
Right.
and they were built anywhere from they were probably around since 3000 BC.
Hmm.
Like, and one of the cool things about that is whenever they were excavating, I can't talk properly. Everybody knows that by now if you're listening. They were actually doing like a excavation, which I just said. But they found a body underneath one of them.
Hmm.
And the reason they decided that that person was just somebody from the 14th century that tried to move them.
Hmm.
Yeah, wouldn't that be horrible? Like, do you think that that person was trying to move him and it just kind of rolled back on him and he just sat there and chilled? Or I wonder if he was
Yeah.
given the quick demise. Like,
Yeah. You would hope that it would be quick.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because the other alternative would be really sucky. So,
Yes.
yeah.
but and see, are you familiar with the stone spheres in Costa Rica?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, because I wondered if you considered that the same as the standing stones.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's definitely a standing stone. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, there's spheres and everything, but I mean, to me, the standing stones essentially are just, something that was intentionally placed in order. Now, the stones like the deer stones in Siberia and Mongolia,
Hmm.
like they're not in any kind of order or anything, but they really they're all over I guess they're more like what's it called? Um, like the Washington Tower. What
Oh,
are they?
the Washington Monument,
Yeah, what do they call those? Like they found one in
an
Utah.
obelisk.
Yeah.
Obelisk. Yeah, I guess they
Yeah.
would be
Hmm.
more of an obelisk, but technically they're standing stones.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess it really depends on the intention behind it, don't it? And I drank about 6 cups of coffee, so I'm gonna have to take a little break real quick.
That's
You all
fine.
talk.
Well, and here's something that crosses my mind too about them is obviously these had significant meaning for peoples all over the world,
Mhm.
and today we have no clue
Right.
what it was. So like I said, I always liked, the concept of it, being a way to go from one dimension to another. Because
Right.
maybe there was a way that they were able to activate them back then that we've just lost that knowledge over time.
Yeah. So it'd be similar to a Stargate.
Right. Yeah. Kind
Mhm.
of, sort of.
Yeah. That's
Exactly.
yeah. That to me that's what the hi Carrie and hi Alan. To me that's what that was. To me, I believe that the Tower of Babel, they were trying to make a gateway into the heavens,
Right.
which would have been, which is not always understood in that way. Some people have the
Hmm.
misconception, that they were trying to literally build a tower into heaven, which which was not going to work. and,
Right.
and
Right. Yeah.
I'm certain that they understood that,
Yes.
but you have all the ziggurats and things like that all over the world as well.
Hmm.
So so to me with the gateway trying to do that, to me it ties into what you're talking about. You have some natural stargates, like in
Hmm.
Mount Graham in Arizona, and some other ones around the world that are known, and the native peoples of the area will tell you that's what they were.
Hmm.
And as I've said before, whenever you look at the spirals, whenever you found the rocks with the spirals in them, those people who witnessed what was coming in, uh, from what I've been told, according to the direction of the spirals, that's saying whether it was coming in or whether it was leaving out.
Hmm.
So
Right. Right. Well, and like I said, I know that there's a key somewhere,
yes,
that there are some that are incoming, some that are outgoing, and some that you could do either or.
right.
Um, and I also find it really interesting because there's this set in Siberia in Mongolia.
Hmm.
They're called the deer stones. And the
Mhm.
reason that they're called that is there are carvings on so many of them of flying deer.
Yeah.
So, what else was there, and let's not even think about the Santa Claus thing. But, but I mean, like I said, where would they get that concept? Because these have been around since about 3,000 years, I think.
Mhm.
So, clearly as old as Stonehenge.
Right.
And, like I said, they're putting all of these very elaborate, I mean, because they say the detail in these drawings on these stones is amazing.
Hmm.
And
So,
when it comes to these standing stones and things, it just solidifies for me that there was actually something like a communal world at that point, because they're all from around the same time, like 3,000
mhm,
years ago, 4,000 years ago,
Hmm.
and they're
right.
across the world, just like pyramids. There's more pyramids in the Americas than there are in Africa. I mean,
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
so,
Hmm.
and it's kind of amazing to me, like, that even now we kind of think that the lands were separated and nobody knew each other. It's kind of hard to believe at this point.
I know. Exactly.
Yeah,
Right there with you.
Yeah. That's. I think that's some more of the disinformation campaign.
for sure.
Hmm.
You know.
Well,
But how much is? Sorry, hello.
hey,
Hey.
Hey, Heather.
Hey, let me just jump in. How much is and I'm going to use the word conspiracy to keep us in the dark, or how much of it is just plain ignorance that never got updated?
Right.
I think
Mhm.
it's a combination. I think it was designed to make us ignorant about it.
Mhm.
I think that y'all are thinking too hard on it. I think that, honest to God, that at some point in time, some smart ass, or excuse me, somebody who thought they knew everything said, "Oh, well, this is what happened," and because people didn't know any different, they said, "Oh, well, that must be what happened,"
Yeah.
and nobody thought to change it, and so it just became the way things were. Um, I mean, what is
Yeah,
it? What is the quote that what I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. What is it that can accurately be described as evil when it can just as easy be described as stupidity? You
um,
know the one I'm talking about. I'm butchering it terrible,
I
but
don't know it. I mean, to me, it all goes back to like the one world totalitarian theory, because these standing stones, by all means, could have been some kind of technology, like we're talking about. You were talking about potential stargates and things, and depending on the way they rotated, it's very possible that this is leftover technology, similar to like the Titanic and things like that.
well, so I'm sorry I'm late. Apologies to everyone, and I'm just gonna dive right in. So
Let's just get right into it.
I
Let's
have
go.
I have I have someone that shared some theories. So let me just go into a very different place in my life. So there was a time when there was a group of people called Otherkin,
Mhm.
and they're still around. But you see them on the fringe of everything. But so there were some people who they identified as elven kind, and there was a gentleman among them who, I want to say his name was Mark Roberts, and I could be very wrong because it's been a hot minute since this happened. But he was where the Stargate for the movie and all that came from. That was actually a project he was working on. And Mark identified as Elven. And so these people who were in this um, group, subgroup of otherkin, they very much had the belief that there were standing stones that were natural, and that those were the real stargates, and that there were some of these, like the stones in Glastonbury, and there's some stones I think in Scotland, that these were the real ones, and that you could actually, they were just natural portals to other dimensions,
Hmm.
and that Stonehenge was where the druids tried to recreate and make their own portal.
Hmm. I very well
Have I said all this before? I'm sorry
No,
if I'm
you
repeating
haven't.
myself.
I think
No,
you and I've discussed it.
You haven't discussed it with us.
no.
Well, it's one of those. It's not something I share often, but there is this whole contingent, and like I said, there's a lot of. And Mike's asking about the other. Yes, Mike, I borrow from this from that worldview and put it in my books because it's very much something that I find a lot of truth in, and I do believe that these stones are portals, and I find it interesting. Sorry, I'm going to have to decline that. I find it interesting that you see this pop up in other books. Like what's the one with the lady and the hot guy with the red hair that she goes, "Oh, sing me a song
Oh,
of a time that was that
you're
that."
talking about it was Dragonfly and Amber was the original name, and now it's on.
Stars.
If it's
Yeah.
if it's got a hot guy with red hair, I need to read it.
Oh God,
Scott,
the
the hot
Outlander.
Scotsman. Yeah,
Outlander.
yeah. That bar is on it, and she goes through the standing stones,
Hmm.
and is going to portals, and that is very much something that if like I said, if you look deep into the folklore and into the legends, you're going to find it there. But like I said, these other kin, they had deeper knowledge and understanding of it, and I wish I could remember that name. Well, tonight we're going to call him Mark Roberts, but Mark Roberts is the one that he lived in Dallas, Texas, and I believe he was associated with the Elinari kin. No, was it the Elinari? Anyway, if you do a deep dive on the internet, you're bound to find some of the stuff, and I will strongly suggest Stephen Hill. You read it.
All right.
That sounds really interesting. I like to look into it more. Um, by chance, did he get transported to Oak Ridge, Tennessee?
I don't know. I never met Mark per se. I saw him on the message boards, and like I said, it was during an awakening period of my life to some stuff that was kind of difficult for me to accept, but I have since accepted it. But there's a lot of really interesting insights into this stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's. I know with some of the stuff that I've viewed, it's with the archaeoastrology, um, or astronomy, whatever. that right there gets to be really interesting too. But that I believe most of that is probably more modern than what these standing stones are. You know.
I would fall into that as well. And there's still, I feel like there's still standing stones that get put out in the world today. Like, think about the one that was recently destroyed. That the
Bob,
Bob
I think I know
Dominguez.
Bob.
Bob Dominguez is Bigfoot
Mhm.
Society.
Yep.
Linda, he's completely awesome, and I
Yes, he
totally
is.
say check him out.
Yep.
Bob Dom.
Bob is always welcome in Weird Realities, but I think that he probably stays very committed to all the stuff that he does.
Yes. Yeah, he does. Yeah, I've met him one time. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, he's a real good guy.
You all had some pretty famous standing stones down your way in Georgia. The Georgia guys. You can't see them now. Did any of you ever go see those?
No.
I did not.
Kind of hate I didn't, but no, I
I
didn't.
know,
Either.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
What did they ever bust anybody for that?
no.
You can't
No.
bust the government for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been proven true a lot.
Don't you know it's illegal to bring up the illegal stuff the government does?
Right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
with that right there, with those standing stones, do you think it was mostly, with the stargates and things like that? So it was like mostly to worship. It's just kind of like some of those in Scandinavian countries. You know, it's some believe that that's where they would get together and they would worship Odin, Woden or Odin, whatever, however you want to call it.
It could have been a trifold. Like it could have been like a worshiping center. It could have been, you know, the portal. It could have been all of it all in one.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
really could have been.
Yeah. To me, with the portal, you know, it's it's just like from the Book of Enoch. You know, it says that 200 watchers came down on Mount Hermon, and they were worshipped. You know, so
Just I'm going to take a side jump over here for a minute, Stephen. What do you think about those watchers in what the mountain range in California? Have you ever heard about the long watchers, or because that's one of those things I wanted to ask you about?
I'm trying to think. I'm thinking of the
Dark watchers.
The what?
Dark watchers.
Dark watchers. It's not ringing a bell right now.
It is a name given for a group of entities in California folklore purportedly seen observing travelers along the Santa Lucia Mountains.
Oh, okay.
And they're sometimes giant-sized with hats and walking sticks.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I've heard just a little bit about that. It's not much.
But we need to do a deep dive on that sometime because they fascinate me. I want to know more.
Right.
I want to know why they get a hat and why they get a walking stick.
Mm-hmm.
You dress for success, as I always heard.
Yeah.
So with the shadowy figure like that right there, it's there are people who have people I've talked to before who had encounters with the hat person, hat people. But they didn't. The guy that I talked to about that, he didn't mention anything about a walking stick.
Well, these are giants, and they're seen in the mountains. I mean, it's something. It's not the dude that's going to show up in your bedroom, but it's very weird. I mean, I've only in the last year come across this legend, and it's something that I'm really interested in learning more about.
We should do an episode on it sometime.
Yes.
Oh, I see this.
Yeah, I saw that.
At this point, I'm kind of afraid to believe anything like that.
Yeah.
Because I can make those pictures.
Well, I mean, yeah, like I said, I've told you more than once with AI being what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, I thought it was really interesting.
Yes, it is. And to me, the photo, whether the photo's authentic or not, I mean, there are the stories out there of the native tribes and how they used to trade with the hairy giants.
Yeah.
That was that seemed to be a really common practice. And you had you had two different types of giants. You had the red-haired giants, and you had the ones with the black hair.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. And like the way I've always heard it was the red-headed ones were the mean ones.
Yeah,
like the ones with double rows of teeth. Like the one they found in Iraq. What was it?
In Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, there were actually two of them that were killed over there. So. And you also have reports of mountain giants, which would be basically they would be giants here in America, but it's in northern states and mountainous areas. Once again.
Do you think some of the giants are actually trolls?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Why do you think that we have to call everything a giant?
Because they're giant.
Because people don't believe trolls? I mean, I don't get it.
It's kind of like having an extended cab truck. The back seat's actually just a catch-all for everything.
I mean, it's similar to like dinosaurs. Like in the 1860s, dinosaurs didn't exist as dragons as a catch-all term for everything. Yeah,
and so giants, anything that's out of the ordinary, a large or something like that, it just easily fits into that category. Whether that's what it actually is or not. But I mean, as far as the trolls, I mean, there was a report out of Montana. There was a couple They had it's like an RV. I don't know. It's kind of like a Winnebago or something like that. And they'd stopped on this mountain road. I don't remember if they were broke down or they decided to just stop and walk into the woods a little bit or something. When they came back, they're kind of like their Winnebago, whatever. It was the top of it was what was on the road. It hadn't been rolled over. It had just been picked up and set upside down in the road.
Nice.
So,
and yeah, Alan, there was I think that's what we were talking about, was the ones that were killed by that attacked the military group, right? There was one individual one time somewhere that did it too.
Yeah. There were two of them two of the giants that were killed, Alan. There was Steve Quayle brought the first one to the public. I think he actually spoke with the pilot. And then L.A.'s Marzulli, he reported on another one that had been killed in Afghanistan. So there were two separate giants that were killed.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a segue. Everybody always questions how the standing stones that are man-made were put into place. Yeah. If that was a time that was more prominent where giants are concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that would make a lot of sense, because if you had people who were 13, I've heard reports of 30 footers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if that's how much of that is accurate.
That's what I call a mountain troll.
Yeah. but I mean, it's just like with these standing stones. If you had a 30-foot person who was a lot stronger than the average human, I'm saying if you had a giant that was our size, they would still be a lot stronger than us.
Yeah.
And if you had somebody that's 13 feet or bigger, that's just crazy. You know, some of the teepees, or what are called teepee structures in some of the western states in America that are Bigfoot, or what's been credited to building these things. Mm. And some of these logs will weigh 4 tons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have those, what is it, the Coral Gables,
right,
where that one guy moved all those big, I don't want to call them bedrocks, I don't have a better word. It
was coral. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hence Coral Gables. But I sound like I'm saying Carl. I'm sorry. Coral. But anyway.
You sound like Rick on The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
You got to be careful with them coral snakes.
But you know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's some type of ability to do that. But I know at Stonehenge, they found deep, like, rivets in the earth that were where they drug the stones. Mm-hmm. So they had some way of doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
The guy in Florida, I've actually been there when I was little, to their coral garden.
Coral.
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 Can we call this the coral episode?
But, you know, it is pretty impressive that he was able to move that stuff, but he never let anybody see how he did it. Like, so it's kind of weird that he would have some kind of technology like that and not just give that out.
See, so you know the aliens wouldn't let him tell anybody. They said, "Well, we'll show you how to do it, but if you tell anybody else, we're going to have to come back and kill you."
Yeah,
I don't much
probe you
aliens right now.
Right. With that also, I mean, some have. I don't know. I don't remember as well as I should, but with they thought with certain sounds that some of these giants could make, that they could actually cause things to levitate.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you've seen that guy with the what's it called, the
didgeridoo,
he can levitate rocks with that. Like,
really?
Yeah, I've seen people levitate rocks with the vibration of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of intense, really. Like, because there are ways out there to levitate things with sound vibrations and things of this nature, and you know, it's very possible that that's what was used to build all these things, like pyramids, standing stones, and stuff. Mm-hmm. Or they could just drug it. You know, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if you're 18 feet tall, then you and your buddy could probably drag one of these big rocks.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of giants, one time I was at Walmart and some little girl called me a fat giant.
That's terrible.
Appreciate it.
Well, and I'm going to tell you, my dad used to have this guy that worked for him. Sweetest guy in the world. He was like 6'5" and probably 375.
So about my size,
And
yeah.
and well, the thing about it is, my dad would put 3 or 4 people on one end of a pole, and Mr. Robert would get on the other end, and they would move it that way because he could lift so much.
Yeah.
And I know that, in a time when the average man was 5'4", someone that was a foot taller would be called a giant.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's that's very true. It's just like in the average height of the Canaanites, or the people who lived in the Levant, or I guess modern day Israel. I think the average height was around 5'8".
Yeah.
So, if you got somebody 6'6", 6'8", that's a really big person compared to everyone else.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so if I'm standing next to somebody at 6'8", I kind of get freaked out. I'm like, yeah,
Right. Well, that's what I was say. Somebody's got to be hitting 6'8", 6'10" before I notice it, because I grew up with tall people.
Right.
My dad's was the shortest brother, and he was 6 foot. My brothers are 6'5.5", 6'6.5". My niece is 6'1". I mean, so
y'all are gonna be surprised when we finally meet up, because Tully's been saying we're the same height, but he's actually like 5'5".
I love it.
No,
actually, Cecil, Tully has been kidnapped, and someone is using his phone.
I think he's just chilling in an old folks' home down in Clearwater right now.
No. He sent me a link from Facebook last night, so I know that it's not
I'm
Tully.
verifying. He's been kidnapped.
Yes. Because I told him pictures or I'm not believing it, and he never sent a picture. So he's being held captive somewhere, and someone has his phone.
I'm sure he's drank an ocean of Aquavente. He's on vacation.
So you talked about how they called you a fat giant. It's kind of funny. I've got a cousin. She had her youngest daughter. Whenever she was little, she was old enough to talk, but she was just real little. And I remember she saw me walk in the house one day, and she when she looked up at me, she just got scared.
I'm starting to think that kids are starting to think I'm like a Santa Claus type person now, because they get excited when they see me in Walmart now.
Really?
Well, because you have such good energy.
And you've got that twinkle in your eyes that is just absolutely phenomenal.
Well, I like to scare them, so I pull up my shirt and show the handle on my 9mm.
That wasn't where I thought we were going. I thought we were going to have an intervention here.
Yeah, they have laws against where she thought that was going.
Can we edit that out, or?
Sure.
Yeah, but as far as some of the actual height of what some of those giants may have been, I mean, it's hard to tell it exactly, because a cubit could have been anywhere from 18 inches up to 24.
Right.
So I have a project that we should do. We should tackle. Is we should look at all these different types of cryptid phenomenon, and then cross-reference it with folklore and see what we can come up with, and how many various names these beings have, and see if we can get. This is like a long-term project, kids. But if we could get to the root of stuff, that would be a book I would buy.
Yeah,
it's hard to get to the root of some of this stuff. Like, I mean, the history before it's just not there. A lot of times, it's and there's one thing that we've been researching that we can't get to the root of, and it was formed probably this like in the last 100 years. And we can't trace it back to its origins right now, but we'll get there.
Okay. Mike Lewis, I want to say, I used to tell people the best time to go to Walmart is in the middle of the night because nobody's there but the weirdos and the workers. And then I realized that I was one of the weirdos there at 3
Yeah.
in the morning.
That's me. I would never when I actually shopped at Walmart, I would actually go after 11.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I would never go before midnight for the longest time, but our Walmart now closes at 11.
Yeah.
Ours does too.
Yeah. Damn 2020 just ruined everything.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's essentially over now. Let's go back to 24/7 Walmart, people. Let's get on.
With your one lane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Standing stones.
Standing stones.
Okay. When stones form naturally, they always have a magnetic signature that will always point in the same direction, similar to a compass. So, do you think that that's some of the vibration and stuff that people feel when they go in amongst these stones?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I think we should consider the ley lines.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Hmm.
Well, that would be a
Absolutely.
map I'd like to see is a plot of the standing stones and the ley lines,
Right.
like how
Well,
that intersects.
you know,
Yeah.
one of our first episodes was ley lines.
Yeah.
And we do know that Stonehenge lines up with the ones that are in Libya or shoot, where was it?
Bellback.
You know, maybe so. Maybe
Yeah.
so. But
And
yeah,
it also lines up with America's Stonehenge in New Hampshire too.
uh-huh.
I'm very envious of your memory, Stephen.
It's
Oh,
the
good
lack of
living.
all the drugs over the years, people.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, just saying.
I have to. I don't even call, like I have to call my wife baby because I forget her name sometimes.
Look, my father could not remember names at all. So he referred to men as Jack or Slick, and he called women pretty lady. And I cannot tell you how many girls came to me over the years. Do you know what your dad calls me? Pretty lady. And I'm thinking, honey, he just doesn't know your damn name. So,
I've been done 3 years. That's gonna be me. Hey, darling.
there you go. I'm like,
Yeah.
in this day and age, somebody would probably get him for sexual harassment.
Oh yeah.
You know, yeah. So
Yeah.
just the craziness being
Yeah.
what it is. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's,
So.
I knew a guy who ran a tire shop, and everybody that came in was cuz. Men, women, didn't matter who.
Yep.
Everybody was cuz.
Yeah. Yep. Those people. I mean, and the thing about it was, because I mean, he would go see his youngest sister, and her name's Dorothy, but we call her Dot. For a week and a half, he would refer to me as Dot. The whole time he was with her, he would refer to her by my names.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was a huge Conway Twitty fan and could not sing the right words to the man's songs, and that's what we woke up to on Sunday mornings.
Really?
So yes,
Conway.
yes.
I love those commercials whenever it would have people get the words wrong in the song, you know.
Oh, that was him. Because I made the comment one day that when my kids were little, he'd sing to them. And I'm like, the man couldn't carry a tune in a bucket and could not remember a word, but y'all loved it. And my daughter's like, Mom, he's right there. And he goes, she's right. I mean, so yeah, it was fun. That's probably why I did not know what a lot of songs meant until I was an adult.
Yeah.
Because I remember listening to He Stopped Loving Her Today by George Jones, and I was in my 30s, and I'm like, oh my God, he died. My dad's like, you didn't know that? And I'm like, no, because you've been singing it wrong all these years.
See, I mean, and Conway, how he got away with some of the perversion in those songs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I'm going to tell you, growing up in our house, you were either a fan or you hated him. Me and my youngest brother both love him, and my middle brother hates him. So
How can you hate
You
Conway?
hate the Conway Twitty.
Yeah.
he hates Conway Twitty.
Oh, man.
Been a long time.
Yeah. What used to be funny with when my daughters were younger, and we would all travel somewhere together. We would all either be humming or singing all three of us a different song, and it would drive my wife crazy.
Yeah. I can see that because my husband will have the TV going and be listening to TikTok videos, and I'm like, one of them's got to go. Just
No,
you decide, but
No.
something's got to give.
no, we're multitasking.
Oh my God, how the hell you function? Just yeah, it makes my teeth grind.
My life, I don't know. My life seems to be a multifunction at this point. So.
Well, see, now I read and listen to music and can have, and be fine. But it's the I'm not a big TikTok fan anyway.
Yeah.
It aggravates me. So yeah, it's like repetitive noises. Like if you're sitting beside me clicking a pen, I'm going to tell you to stop, and if you don't, I'm going to take it. End of story.
You ain't taking my opinion.
Yes, you watch and see.
Somebody
See,
yelled
someone.
at me the other day at work because I fidget. Like
Uh-huh.
when I'm sitting here, I'm usually flicking a lighter. You guys already know it, like constantly. But at work, I was sitting there talking to somebody, clicking away. Didn't you know I was doing it? And it's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, what?
Well, see, and the thing about it though is I fidget a lot. I mean, I'll sit there and I'm bouncing my feet or I'm tapping my fingers one to the other. I just don't make noise. It's the noise that bothers me. And I'm going to tell you, I was not as bad about it. And we had a girl that worked for us that had a nervous tick, and she would sit right at your ear, just click, 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 click. And I'm like, Susie, stop. And she's like, what? I'm like,
Yeah.
stop. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I just reached over and took her pen and sat it down. I said, don't touch it. Because with me it is. It's the sound, the noise.
I
Yeah.
used to walk around with like $5 in quarters, and when I'd sit there and talk to people, I'd just like clink.
Yeah. You should
No.
you should get silver coins and do that. They have a completely different sound.
They sound so pretty. They remind me of
Yes.
the good wind chimes.
Yes.
I got a new business venture. We should make the soundless clickable pen.
There you go. I could get behind that.
Okay, I found something I want to read.
Okay.
Howdy.
According to authors and researchers Jim Vieira and Hugh Newman,
Yes.
over a 200-year period, more than 1,000 accounts of 7-foot and taller skeletons have been reported unearthed from ancient burial sites in North America.
Mm-hmm.
Newspaper accounts, towns, county histories, letters, scientific journals, diaries, photos, and Smithsonian ethnology reports have carefully documented this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes.
These skeletons have been reported from coast to coast in burial chambers, stone crypts, caves, ancient battlefields, and massive mounds. Strange anatomic anomalies such as double rows of teeth, jawbones so large as to fit over the face of the finder, and elongated skulls were documented in virtually every state. Smithsonian scientists identified at least 17 skeletons that stood at over 7 feet tall in their annual reports, including one example that was 8 feet tall and a skull with a 36-inch circumference.
Wow.
The average human skull is 20 inches. And the Smithsonian Institution is mentioned dozens more times as the recipient of enormous skeletons from across the United States.
And
We've
yet, if you
talked
go to the
about that.
Smithsonian, they're not there.
Yeah, and this is from 1952 Fate magazine. They published this statement. The Iroquois, Osage, the Tuscaroras, the Hurons, the Omahas, and many other North American Indians all speak of giant men who once lived and roamed in the territories of their forefathers. All of this is now the U.S., and there are traditions of these great giants.
Yeah. Abraham Lincoln also mentioned giants in his speech that he gave near Niagara Falls.
And
well, listen to this. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to throw this out there. Like, there's never been a full dinosaur skeleton found, and there is a thought that the bones they find are actually ancient human bones. So, I mean, if we go by that and you find a thigh bone that's like 4 feet long or 5 feet long, that person would have been massive.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been graves found, burial mounds, like you were mentioning, where people are like 30 feet tall. You know, and it's one of those things, they just cover everything up the best they can.
Right.
Because like we said earlier, dinosaur wasn't a word till 1860. So there was probably some, and that's around the time that the mud flood happened. So there's probably some kind of conjoined effort to discredit, that as well, like before this last reset.
Well,
Out there.
listen to this. In 1519, Spanish explorer Alonso Alvarez de Pineda was mapping the Gulf Coast, came upon what he called a mixed race of giants and pygmies that had settled in large towns near the Mississippi River.
Yep.
A race of giant from 10 to 11 palms in height, and a race of pygmies only 5 or 6 palms high.
Yep.
Yeah. That's did DeSoto, did he also run across some giants?
Yeah.
Apparently everybody did.
Yeah, everybody that came here, there were still giants living among some of the native people here in America, especially around Florida and in the southeast.
Well, I mean, when they speak about the native people, they leave it to the Native Americans,
right?
But the truth probably is that there was multiple different kinds of races, multiple different creeds that lived here. Like the Moors were settled in Florida at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, I actually just left this lady's office. The people who do Metaphysical Mississippi that we're partners with, the 2 sisters who run that, their family land in Louisiana, it's across the river from Natchez. They found the burial site of some of the giants there.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And now, if you Google it, they're going to basically say it's false. Like,
right?
Because now with AI and everything, any pictures you see similar to the one we was talking about earlier, you can be like, well, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But before this AI came around, like 20, 30 years ago, you would see pictures of people standing next to 12, 13-foot bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was Photoshop around, of course, but it wasn't that great. Right. At that particular time. So, and those look just like these AI pictures now. So moving forward, anybody that's going to research anything like that, it can be discredited. But similar to what's it called, that face thing, like face swap or whatever it was, where you can basically turn anybody into somebody else, so that if any kind of videos emerge and it's a true video, they can be like, oh, that's just this,
Yeah.
It's an effort to change history, and we went through it before. Think about the orphan trains, when they were taking children and spreading them out across the world and just giving them to random people from one particular clan, essentially. And it only takes one generation, if that generation didn't know anything before, to change history. Right. And that's what's happening now, I believe.
Well, there was because we've also covered giants before, and there was one found in Northumberland, England, that had I think a 6-foot thigh bone or something like that, and they said that they averaged it at 21 feet.
Yeah.
And that was before AI. So,
I think there was also a giant found in Ireland that was actually petrified or mummified or something.
Ooh.
Yeah, and there were people who would view him and they would faint. I'll tell you the reason why later.
Well, I can't wait to hear this.
I know why.
I can tell you where my brain's going. So
yeah, my brain's going nowhere good.
No, it's not.
That's probably the correct direction to go.
You didn't have the Rasputin syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with that, the Bible talks about the Nephilim being on the earth and how they were men of renown, which means that they were famous. People talked about them. They were well known all over the world at that time. So, in some of these legends, it's if you believe the flood story, obviously somebody passed that information along. So it's a lot of what we have, with the Greek mythology, the different gods and things like that. I tend to think that's where the origin was. And with the different gods that were worshipped by the Greeks, they were also worshipped by the Romans and the Babylonians. They just had different names.
Yeah.
The names changed, with each in the languages of the Greek and the Roman. And
That's always been something that I just kind of wonder about. Are they the same people, or are they different people with the same characteristics?
yeah, it's
It's so hard to say.
yeah. To me, with a lot of it, it's I tend to think that the tribe of Dan actually did a lot of the spreading of a lot of this information. To me, it's according to who you want to believe or who you want to listen to. It was thought that some of those from the tribe of Dan were actually some of the Trojans, who rode in the horse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they say never trust a Dardanelle.
I mean, when it comes to races of humans, I know right now it's what Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, but
Right.
Denisovians.
Yeah.
What about the hobbits?
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, the hobbits. Yeah. What about that? That they found in Scotland. Where they had to be little people to live in that underground dwelling.
Yeah. Well, and wherever they found that, I'm calling them the hobbits. They basically were hobbits.
Mm-hmm.
It was an island that had no, like,
No
it never
access.
had, it never had a land bridge to it.
Yeah.
It was something that, if you went there, you would have had to go on a boat, and they
Yeah.
just couldn't prove out how they got there.
That sounds similar to what the Menehune were reported to be on the island in Hawaii.
Yeah.
I've wondered about the Menehune with their little pig noses.
Yeah.
And because they love to roast pig in Hawaii.
Do you think the goldfish theory plays into that? Because the reason they said those people on that island were so small was because it was such a small land, and they had to essentially evolve to live on that land and have enough resources. And kind of like the goldfish, if you put it in a bowl, it won't get so big, but if you put it in a pond, it'll grow huge. Oh. And
My fish guy said that is not a true statement. A
Really?
fish is going to get as big or as small as it's going to, except for in strange instances. It has nothing to do with the size of body of water they're in.
I have trouble believing that because a little goldfish in a bowl and you put it in a pond, it gets big.
Yeah, well, it depends on if you've got a koi, koi or cod, right?
Yeah.
Like koi fish, they're cod, and they only get so. They do only get so big in captivity, but if you put them in a larger thing, they do get bigger.
Yeah.
Because just Google that. Because I've watched video. I used to have a big fish, so
Yeah.
Big old fish. But yeah, I don't know. And they've recently been finding skulls of way different kinds of humanoids. They found some with spikes in their head and stuff like that. I don't know. It's just wild. I don't know. It's untelling what our history actually contains and how it relates to these standing stones and structures of this kind.
But okay, so we know that technology is usually 10 to 15 years ahead of what we're actually seeing,
if not farther.
So do you ever wonder, with because we talk about AI, but I wonder how much of the stuff that with weird stuff like that is AI generated, and it's just now we know what AI is.
Yeah, it could be. I will say this about AI. They're gonna mess around with that until something really terrible happens. I mean, they need to refer back to Terminator because I mean it's not been saying some good stuff recently. So
Well, I'm not even talking about what it's saying, but I mean, think about how, you know, we even like with Bigfoot, let's just say, we people will talk about, okay, so the Patterson Gimlin film, it's, you know, is it a fake or a phony? And people have researched it and blah 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 blah. But now, if you have AI and AI creates something like that, who's going to disprove it?
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's where my concern comes in with AI. Is we're never going to know what's real and what isn't anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
And it's
Well, I mean, it's very concerning because we used to have checks and balances, and now we're just seeing that there no longer are the checks and balances.
no, it's legal
Well, I was
to
going to
use
say,
all this propaganda.
yeah.
you have to have people that have ethics, and you're going to be lucky if you get a 50-50 ratio there.
Yeah.
Because like I said, if I do something with AI, I'm very, very, very upfront with the fact that I created this using AI.
Yeah.
Because
But we come from a time when people still had morals and ethics, and I don't know that that's the case now. I
Right.
mean, and this is just in my business world.
Mhm.
I've had people steal my ideas that I discussed with them, and because I did not act on it fast enough,
Mhm.
they think it's theirs. Well,
Yeah.
you weren't doing anything. Well, maybe I wasn't doing anything with it yet, but
Right.
so, and to me, that wouldn't have happened in my parents' generation because people still, well, maybe it would have, but not as often as it would
Well,
today.
here's the thing too, though, and I don't disagree with you, but the other part of that is it's not just the newer generation that has the no ethics and that uses the propaganda and everything. It's every generation. It's just we were
And I'm
taught
going to have to
differently.
agree, but I think, I
Mhm.
mean, and I could be wrong. Maybe it's because we weren't as connected,
Yeah.
but
Right.
it just seems like people used to have, I mean, like you could do a deal with a handshake.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's still people out there you can do that with. Like, I consider myself a very honest person. Like, I would honor a handshake agreement,
Hmm.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if I thought I was going to make millions of dollars, I might not. So, there's always that there because greed always kind of plays greed
Right.
mostly plays into everything like that. Like,
Well,
I'm gonna be
Right.
you
greedy.
know,
Make
I,
this all
I
good.
remember somebody coming to work one day and she had been listening to the news on the way in and she was so upset over what she had heard. And she goes, "Oh my God, things like this didn't happen when we were younger." I'm like, "Yes, they did.
Oh yeah.
We just didn't know it. Unless
Right.
something was a huge thing. I didn't know what went on in California
No.
Monday
no,
through Friday. It had to be impacting the world for us to hear about it when we were young. So
but that back then you had journalistic integrity where people actually went out and verified sources and double checked and made sure before they went to press.
and I totally agree with that. There are countries in Europe that you cannot post something as news unless it's been verified. I think that should be an international thing. I think if you can't, verify it, then it shouldn't be called news. Call it entertainment if you want to. But, to me, news should be as unbiased and as truthful as possible.
And
Or,
I think it's an issue that people don't have guilt anymore. I was joking, like if I stole an idea and made millions of dollars, I'd end up having to cut somebody in on it that came up with it because I just
mhm,
feel guilty about it.
Right.
right.
Like,
That's
and
because you have a conscience.
I don't know if
Mhm.
I do. I think it's just a
That's called a
deep.
conscience.
I've got
Just
several consciences. Apparently, I've always got 3 or 4 people talking to me.
Yeah, yeah, it happens. It
that
happens
it's
to the
because
best of us.
that's the, what is it, force. That's the force within you.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I was going to say the multiple personalities. My bad.
No, no.
I think in order for it to be multiple personalities, they got come out. These are just up here floating around.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. But yeah, like I said, and that's Mo and I've talked about this before. The biggest thing I see now is there is no consequence if you do things like that.
Right.
And because of that, then people just, well, I don't have to worry about what are they going to do?
You know,
You know,
I agree with that because back in the day, if you would have went against a handshake deal, you would have packed a wholesale ass whooping. Nobody
oh
would even
yeah,
think about that.
absolutely. And
Now,
everybody would have said, you asked for that. you
Yeah.
know.
and now you're worried about being incarcerated for whipping somebody's ass. It's not fair.
Right.
hmm Yeah, because I can lie to you and steal from you and everything else and not barely get a slap on the wrist.
You know?
But if I beat your ass for doing those things to me, I go to jail for assault.
That's probably
Yeah.
what it is. Damn.
hmm
Never you thought
There's
about
no
that.
consequence anymore.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, people don't care because they don't have to worry about it.
No, they don't.
And I hate that because I miss things like, okay, probably shouldn't even say, I miss us on 9/12 of 2001. We were the most united country, you know, for the most part.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we all had one goal in mind, taking care of us, as a nation.
But
Some
that's
people
what
took
happens
the
when you have a common enemy.
hmm
UND a little far.
I agree. I agree. There's always those few, you know.
But that was why Hitler was so successful with his persecution of the Jewish faith or the Jewish
hmm
people, was because at that time Germany was so downtrodden after everything that happened with World War One that they needed a scapegoat. They needed someone to blame everything on, and here he was going, "Oh look."
Yeah.
But that's the thing is, I mean, you can unite people against a common evil,
hmm
I should say, or
Do you know
common foe.
Mo's grandparents actually migrated here from Germany.
Yeah.
And his mother gave us a box of stuff that, she'd had all of her life and stuff. And in German, are these two books. And the only part of these two books I could read were Adolf Hitler because it's all in German. And you open it up and it's got these pictures that are like hand pasted in of Hitler and the Third Reich and all of this stuff. Well, my sister-in-law at the time worked with someone who was actually born and raised in Germany. When the wall went up, she and her husband were on one side and her family was on the other side. They didn't see each other for 30 years. But we asked her if she would mind looking at it just to tell us what it was because I'm like, I've got these two Hitler books and I don't know if I should keep them or burn them, or what. Yeah, there you go. And so she took them and read them and everything. She goes, what they were called were cigarette books. She said, you'd get the book. And she said textbooks were the same way. Not everybody could afford pictures. So a lot of people had textbooks without pictures in them, and you could buy the pictures separately. Well, what these cigarette books were, you got the book free, and every time you bought a pack of cigarettes, you got so many pictures that you could paste in. And she said the whole book was about when Hitler was first coming into power, when he was the savior of the people, and everybody thought he was gonna, come in and make them, a wonderful country and take care of them. And then by the time everybody fell for it, it was too late.
I
But
got a comment before I forget.
okay.
So these cigarette books were like Sears and Roebuck.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yep.
I was going to say they were dead wrong on that. But, I like the idea of a cigarette book. I wish they'd bring that back. I'd love to get a little picture every time I bought a pack of
I
cigarettes.
would like to if they go back to S&H green stamps, save stamps every time you buy groceries and just order stuff. But, knowing my luck, it would be things like, wish.com.
I got a funny story about that. My mother bought a sofa. It looked nice online, and when she got it, it was a little bit bigger than this chair I'm sitting in.
Oh.
Oh no! A friend of mine sent me a picture that somebody had ordered sex toys from Wish.com.
You can't do that.
It was a combination set. It was Barbie doll sized.
You've got to. There's a few things you have to spend money on, and that's toilet paper, cheese,
Yeah.
and sex toys.
Yes, agreed. Agreed. Yeah. Some things I just don't want to get from China.
Exactly.
So, all right, guys, we are like totally way over our time,
Oh.
but I've enjoyed this conversation.
This was fun.
Yeah.
We are so sorry for the technical difficulties from earlier this evening. We will try to make sure that doesn't happen again in future, but I'm blaming StreamYard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fault.
All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us. Next week, we actually have a guest with us, and we are talking about hauntings.
Hauntings.
And she actually lives in a haunted house.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
that ought to be really interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
so
my apologies for rolling in hot, but I had to.
Hey,
I had to make it.
it worked out
Yes.
good.
Yep. All right, guys. Thanks so much for being here. And until next time, stay weird.
Night,
Start burning
guys.